This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for Avoid the Maze. We are not going to avoid it. I'm going to tell you that right now because it's our journey through life. And if we really could avoid it, I think life would be very boring because we would just be skating along and wow, a perfect world. You know, Martin, I don't think that does exist, but I think you're going to give me some insight on how we can make it a little bit more perfect. So my guest today is Martin Clausen, and I met Martin through Podmatch, and I always want to mention that great organization because I get to meet people like Martin who help make me a smarter person. So welcome.
Thank you. Big words. I like, yeah, I think it's going to be a two-way street, Karen, for sure. I also think Podmatch is amazing as far as like, I like to refer to as like the Tinder for podcasts.
Yep.
I used to have a podcast back in like 2019, and it was such a pain to try to find, I don't know how to put it, but like the right type of guest, I suppose, like really to siphon through them. And Podmatch is actually amazing for that. So I concur with what you're saying there.
Understand.
Yeah.
So tell you said that you had a podcast in 2019. What got you started into podcasting? Because that's always the question everybody will ask me. So I'm going to ask you.
I'll rewind back to 2014, and I'll make it as concise and interesting as possible because I'm never one to just sit and rant about all the details. We all have complex lives, and everybody has something that they're trying to figure out. And I know we're all striving for our own happiness, our own success, to whatever degree that means in your personal life. But in 2014, I live in Denmark, which is where I'm born and raised, and I was at the end of my 20s and I was very lost. I had a bunch of like entrepreneurial things in my early stages of life. I made music, I performed on stage, and I did a ton of things that just never really amassed to anything other than just fun projects. And before I knew it, my 20s were over, and I was just working a dead-end job at a retail store, and always had big ambitions, always had things I wanted to strive for, but I just never really did enough to make sure that I had positioned myself to actually be able to, in a country like Denmark, to go out there and make something bigger with what I had built out as far as the schools, the grades, and whatever I had. So 2014, I am at my ends meet, and I think something different has to change. And I started feeling like the creeping of like depression looming over me. I would tell my parents and friends and family that something bad was happening. I didn't know exactly what it was, but I knew that I needed to make some drastic changes in my life. And one night I sat with a pair of my friends, headset on, playing video games. And I said, I always loved video games, and what would it actually take to work for this company that we were playing the game for? And I went online and I applied to go to work for that job. And it was in Redwoods, California. And a week later, I had an interview, but it turned out to be in Ireland. And this is just a little bit for people to know, like, you have one idea, but life takes you a different direction, right? Before I knew it, I was on a plane to Ireland. I had little to no insight into Ireland. And to really summarize the story, I got really lucky, but I took a big chance. I took a big risk. I changed everything that I'd ever known. And I was like, let's see what comes of it. I had imposter syndrome, just like everyone else has in life. And I felt like they're going to call me out as a fraud and that I don't know what to do. But I actually ended up becoming a manager at the company, the video game company, Electronic Arts, if anybody's into the video game world. And that led me to work for LinkedIn. I also had a chance to work for Shopify Plus, which is in the e-commerce world very famous. All of these roles over a span of like 5 years up until 2019 were great, and I'm forever indebted as far as feeling proud at the fact that I got hired by these companies where a lot of people sometimes can't even get an interview, but someone like me, I'll tell you to give you some confidence that take chances, try to throw something out there and see what actually sticks on the wall, and don't be sitting too much on the fence and worrying about what people will think or are you good enough. But I know it's easier said than done. But I actually left these roles because I always wanted to build my own stuff. And that was why then in 2019, to come back to your question, that I started selling online, and I had gotten all the motivation and inspiration from the people I'd worked with, that I felt like I was able to accomplish this. If nothing else, I would wing it, like, which was why I got these roles to begin with, was by
Right.
winging. And I was trying to just figure out, like, how can I promote myself? How can I market what it is I want to do? And how can I also meet cool people like yourself? And a podcast is just a God-given thing for new age people, right? Of like, you can go on a Zoom call like this and we can sit and chat
Right.
across the pond, right? And we would never have a chance to encounter each other if it wasn't for something like this. So in 2019, I started working for myself. And I did a podcast with a friend of mine who I also met online, who's now my business partner. But we started doing a bunch of different projects. So we sold on Amazon, we sold on Etsy, we did a podcast. We were trying to figure out a bunch of different things. And yeah, I don't want to sit and rant too much, but that was kind of how we actually got started on the podcast story itself. So I don't know if you have any questions leading up to that. If not, you can keep talking.
You know, when I'm listening to your story, I'm hearing my story, my son's story, so many other people that,
Yeah.
Sometimes you get stuck and you just take a job and you do it because you've been told to do it, and you don't let your brain go anywhere else other than maybe complaining all the time. Oh, I wish I had something else, but you don't take that chance. My youngest son, um, 2.5 years ago, he knew that he was where he wanted to be, but he couldn't get to where he wanted to be there.
Mm-hmm.
He knew that he was stuck. And he kept telling us, I'm going to go look for another job. I may move away from home. And my husband and I looked at him thinking, we know this is only part-time, but it's a great job. You're doing what you've always wanted to do. But what we didn't hear in his voice initially was, yes, it is, but I'm stuck and I refuse to be stuck. And next thing we knew, he was accepting a job 1,000 miles away, sort of in the same industry. He's never lived away from home.
Okay.
And he kept saying, Mom, you're going to have the hard part, empty nest syndrome. And I kept thinking, no, I'm not. You're going to have the hardest part because you're away from everything.
Yeah.
But he did it almost like you. It was like, you know what? I'm going to throw it up against the wall. If it doesn't work, my parents are not going to leave me 1,000 miles away to sink. They'll find a way to throw me a lifeline so I can get back up the wall. We haven't had to do that, which is because I believe that there is something in so many of us today that if this doesn't work, then we're going to find a way to make something else work. And that was not the upbringing I had, or I'm sure that your parents had. Their upbringing was, I'm going to go to school, I'm going to get a job, I'm going to raise my family, and whether I like it or not, that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah. Well, so my mom is out in the kitchen. I don't know if you can hear her tinkering away here. And she'll probably be hearing like bits and pieces of this. But yes, it's a different generation. And at certain times of the day, they will still to this day say that I'm crazy for leaving the jobs that I did. And as I alluded to, I was able to work for some brands that most people can't even, get an interview. And I am really proud of it. But I also knew that once I got in behind the obsession and the facade of like what it's like working for these big name brands, you find out that like a lot of people in there are also just winging it, and you get stuck in this kind of salary race, right? I can see that this is my current salary, and if I do my best, I can accumulate, this is the bonus I can get, and here's my percentage raise after a year or 2 years. And you can kind of quickly lay out like what can the next 10 years look like, unless I do like a really big leap and become like a director or take some massive just yourself, like you have to do some very extraordinary things, and usually the only way you can achieve that is by leaving that company, go elsewhere, and then come back into that company with different experience. But if you start at a level at any role, you can only do these incremental upgrades over time. It's very different to snap out of that and do it differently. And I realized that, and as you alluded to now, that's just been the norm for my parents' generation and for my other family members. And they often will look at me as doing something very, very unnerving to them and taking big risk of going like, what about the pension? What about the safety net? And not everybody has the luxury, as you said, with you and your son and your family. Is like, I also, like you, knew that I had something to fall back on if anything was really were to go wrong, and not everybody is in that position. So I can also respect that certain things for me and you or your family sounds easy to do, and somebody will sit and go like, yeah, but I'm in a way different situation, and I respect that. And the reason I'm saying that now, it'll tie into what we're doing, right? So yeah, I concur with what you're saying, and all respect to your son for taking a risk. I can only say, like, I'm proud of it without even knowing that like you build and grow so much from putting yourself into these really uncomfortable environments, for sure.
But even having that safety net, okay, you are taking a risk, okay, because as my son always knew, there would be a time that mom and dad would say, hey, just go take a job, and we've teased him about that a couple of times when he has said on a bad day, I'm going to move home. And it's like, no, there's no home to move back to. But when I read your bio, you talk about being able to do all this and not spend a dime.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we're honest, you have to spend a few dimes to get to where we want to go. But how do people, I know when I started out 13 years ago, I was working with a nonprofit organization. And so I got them to buy into me blogging and podcasting for them. Okay. And so I had something to build from. I wasn't getting paid by them, but I had this name behind me. But when you have this dream like you do, how can you then be able to do it without, hi mom. How do you do it without spending a lot of money to invest?
So I love that you're asking this, and I'll try to, I love that you're thinking this way, firstly, because we have a lot of people going like, what's the catch? And that's kind of what I'm hearing, right?
Right.
And I respect it. Yeah, I respect it. And I also understand it. So when me and my business partner started working together, what actually happened was that I saved up a lot of money with the prior jobs that I had. And I felt like I have enough to fall back on that I can really get started off on the right foot. And then I learned that no matter how much we want to plan for things, life will throw you a curveball. That's just how it always goes, right? And before I knew it, I actually had my partner lost her mother at the stage, months or like weeks after we had just started. I made some bad decisions as far as getting some friends over that I felt like would be good business partners, and they just weren't. And before I knew it, I didn't really have any leg to stand on, and all of the money that we saved up were just gone. So what happened was that we very bootstrapped started to go into these new projects. And every time we would start a new project, whether that was selling on Amazon or creating an Etsy store and learning how to actually market and so forth, we learned that a lot of subscription-based prices and a lot of things were always kept behind like the premium tier. You had to use more and more money to get the good stuff that really moved the needle for your business. And I felt like for people like us that had a lot of talent and willpower and wanted to work, we were almost at a disadvantage regardless of what we did, because you had to have either a ton of time to really invest in yourself, which meant that if you have a family and whatnot, that's very hard to accumulate any time, or you had to have a lot of money. And those things were now gone for us. So as years went on, up until around 22, and this is including COVID and like everybody else who had a hard time around it, right? We were like saying and thinking, is there not a platform that is far more forgiving, that feels like it's on the creator side? And it just wasn't there. And me and my business partner took a big step back, and we were saying, you know what, we're now actually successful on Etsy and other platforms, but with all of the hidden fees and all of the different tools that we actually have to use, whether that is tying it together with our Shopify store, like the bills would always pile up. And we would feel like we had to put these humongous prices on our products that we didn't even feel good about getting somebody to purchase from us. And we knew that it was just a tough proposition. And we were thinking, okay, if we feel this way and we're actually not bad in life. Like we have an okay situation, but we know that's not the same for everyone. How is everybody else skating by, and who's actually really successful in this market? And that was kind of this initiation to start thinking like, how can we create in a platform, if it doesn't exist, where we will take the upfront hit as far as investment and making sure that somebody have a place where they can start out, they can get all of the tools, all of the features out of the gate, and then make sure that the business plan behind it, the profit sharing model, is still to their advantage. And without losing track here, we couldn't find that platform, Karen. It wasn't nowhere. And we actually set out to build it. And we have now invested a lot of money up front, and we're taking a big risk on people like you. And we do it because we know that you are hundreds of episodes into your podcast. We know that you have talked to a massive amount of talented people, and we know there's so many good people out there. And in a bit of an altruistic approach, we wanted to create a platform where creators could really know that we are on the same page as you. We've walked the same steps as you have, and it feels so bad. Like when we would get paid by, let's say, Etsy, sometimes I hated getting paid by them, because I knew how much time I'd spend on it, how much time I'd spend talking to customers, how much time I'd spend talking to USPS, who would throw away my packages. The list goes on and on. And when I did the calculations of how much are we actually earning on an hourly salary, I was like, what are we doing here? Like, what are we truly doing here? Like, this is not worth it, but I still don't want to work on building somebody else's dream larger. So is there really not a place out there? And we couldn't find it. So we decided, you know what, we're gonna do something crazy, and we're trying to build a platform where, so I'll name drop it now, right? I haven't even said it, but we have created something called LearnersHQ. It initially started as a course platform because we took a lot of courses. We loved growing our knowledge and all this. And it initially started as that, but it's become far greater than that. It's like a platform now where you as the creator get the freedom to basically utilize it and position whatever offer you have in any shape, way, or form you want. And we have 2 marketplaces in there. So we have one that's mostly video centric. So if you think of courses or entertainment and kind of like Patreon, and then we have one that's segregated for digital products. So those are the 2 passive income creators that we've made for people like yourself. If you wanted to put on a podcast, or you have like extra episodes or behind the scenes or whatever. And we didn't want to do like Etsy does it, where you have to pay for listings. So we've made all of these free things free to use, and then it's a profit sharing model that we do. And we still wanted to be competitive. So we took Patreon, which I'm sure you or most of your audience are aware of Patreon. And they take 10% charges of any profit on any transaction that's made on their platform. And we do the same, but we've kept out our profits at $8. So to paint a picture for people to understand, if you ever make a sale where 10% will exceed the amount of $8, it won't. So if you make a sale for $1,000 on our platform, we can never charge you more than $8 and then leave you with the rest. And then things that are outside of our control are card fees and country-based taxes and so forth, the things that simply are out of our control. But we did the volume, and we did the calculations. And my business partner is a former accountant with 12 years experience in that field. And we saw that, like, even on, you can do the math in your own head, right? If we have a $1,000 sales on any day and it's still an $8 maximum, like, me and him are more than good as far as just living a life that we feel comfortable with. And we just wanted to create a platform that really, really catered to the creators, because, and I'm going a little bit on a rant here, so you can jump in.
It's okay. I love it. I love it.
So, yeah, so we saw that, like, your Patreons, your Etsys, your Amazons, whatever the name is, we know that they actually benefit from the ones that never succeed. So whoever pays a monthly subscription, they're okay with this, because those companies will get their pay. And if you succeed or not, it doesn't matter to them, because they're going to get your whatever fee it is. And even the ones that do like profit sharing like we do, we also know none of them, like Patreon, again, 10% of your $1,000 is still going to take a hit on you. And you wish that you wouldn't have to give it to this, essentially a vessel, right? These platforms are a vessel. Without the content creators, they have nothing.
Right.
Like, they literally don't have a product. And I think we have a sense of responsibility, knowing what it feels like to be on that side of the fence of putting listings up on Etsy and putting up 500 listings and knowing that only 5 of them are really the ones making the sale. and for whatever reason. And then we know that we were giving them 20 cents on the dollar of every other listing every month. And it just left us with a bad taste in our mouth. And over time, we were just going like, is there really not something better out there? And there wasn't. So we set out to build it.
Well, and I think that the clients who are going to come to you are really going to think about, do I really have the product to put out there? Okay. It's not going to be the person who has this one product right now and says, oh, I want to, team up with you. It's like, they're going to find out very shortly, they need more. It's almost like going on Shark Tank. And when you say, oh, I just developed this yesterday, it's like, you come back after you've had it out for a while. Your theory in business, sadly, isn't being used, and it needs to really be used. And I've talked about this many times. Okay. When I started podcasting, it was just me doing it. And then my son and I started New Cleveland Radio. He was going to do all sports on his end, and I was going to do what I do now. And he then went to work for a sports team, so he had to give up his portion of New Cleveland Radio. But right from the beginning, I wanted to bring other people in. I didn't want it just to always be my voice or my show. And so I basically did the same thing. When people would, reach out to people, and you've got a great message behind you, let's try it out. Yeah. And the first question would be, well, how many listeners? Well, we haven't even put your show out there. I don't know. And I'm not going to know for a while. And these are some of the things that you're going to have to do. I'll give you those tools to do them. But if you do them, then you'll get a following. And I had people come on, and I knew right from the get-go, they weren't doing what they needed to do. And, I had to very nicely explain to them, if you're not doing these things, and this isn't it's costing you time, it's not costing you any money. Okay. And their comment was, well, what are you getting out of it? Well, in the beginning, it was growing my network. It was growing my hits so that I could then go out and do more. And I still operate it that same way 13 years later, because it works for me. But I don't like when I go to somebody and they say, hey, I've got this great program. I can guarantee you, Karen, in your coaching business, you will have $10,000 a month in income. And it's like, how can you guarantee it? Not everybody's going to like me as a coach. I'm not going to like every client. So there's going to be some weeding out. And I don't have enough time in my day or week, because that's not what I'm trying to build. I'm trying to build what I want, my success. And you said right in the beginning, we all have our own version of success. So for some people, wouldn't have meant moving home to build your success. But you knew what you needed to do for you, right?
Exactly. Like it's interesting. So you're speaking to my heart in the sense of like, what we want to give people is the comfort of time. So as I said, when we were using these different platforms, whether it's like Kajabi or whatever, I don't need to start naming them, but everybody knows that most of them have some sort of like monthly subscription, or you have to pay quite a vast amount of money up front where you aren't guaranteed any sort of return on investment. So if you have one bad month, the walls can feel like they're closing in on you, right? And you start acting desperate. And I never feel like that's a good way to start doing anything in life. Whether you're trying to learn to mold clay and become the greatest potter in the world, nobody wants to do that under time constraints. And nobody wants to start trying to learn how to do like something like marketing that a lot of people struggle with. Like a lot of people have some skill set that they are comfortable or they're obsessed with, they can talk about for days. And then they don't know how to monetize it. They don't know how to make it into a business. So we also wanted to give those people a platform and a place where you can try out anything on our platform. You can also create different profiles under one email. So if you want to do like the Karen, the Avoid the Maze podcast, but you are also a magnificent pottery maker, then you can do that on the same profile under a different landing page and have those two things separated and test out like which one should I actually try more of. And you can do as many things as your heart pleases without feeling like the walls are closing in on you. And our investment in people are to let them know, like, we know how painful this can be. And if you have some sort of thing that you would like to see if you can make money from, whether that is to give a general side income to your main job or whatever it is, we want to give you a place where you can feel free to test out what works and try out, whether it takes you a year, a week, or a day. I know that most people would rather want it sooner rather than later, but it's never good, in my experience, to try to achieve these things, especially with digital businesses, under time restraints. It's very, very few of us percentage-wise that can make it through the gate. And I know from working with Shopify that you can go on YouTube, you can type in a search, and you can see a super successful podcast, or you can see a super successful like guru and a guy saying like, oh, just do this. And you never really know the full story, and you can't never really either tell if they're actually being true. And for whatever reason, they have a following. But even I've met people that have followings of like 100,000 of listeners every month, and they still aren't aware of how to actually monetize it. And make it something. So like the glitz and the glamour and people looking at other people and feeling like, oh, there's no point in me trying it because not only can I invest the money every month, there's far better people out there exceeding me. And we really want to coach people and tell them like, do the math. If you have 100 people every month that buy your exclusive content for a podcast, or that buy your course or mini course for $5, and that's 100 people that buy them, and you can do the math yourself. And then people can start seeing it, that we're trying to also let them know that like, don't get blinded by the lights of all of these other people that done it a different way than you. There's so much going around. And if you are obsessive about something, I bet you that there are other people that are the same obsessive out there. And who knows if Karen is the type of personality, like you just said, that you wanted to do it your way. I also try to stress that to people is, you will find your people. You're not a snowflake of an only person in the world that is that way. You're gonna find other people, but we wanted to give them the place where at least they get the time to test out what sticks, what works for me, and what should I try out without feeling like the bills are just piling up. And then we invest in you guys. And whether it takes you 5 years, 5 months, 5 weeks, or 5 days, eventually our investment should pay off in you. And that's kind of our whole ethos that we're trying to do with it. And I have my parents, as you just saw my mom still in the picture there, and they think I'm crazy, and it's very foreign to them, and it's not the usual. They still are like, but what's the intake, and what are you already earning? And I'm telling them like, this is going to be a compound effect, and that is also what I'm stressing to people. The platform, for anyone questioning us now, we are 5 weeks into our beta launch. There's still a lot of room for improvement, and we want people to feel comfortable signing up. And that's why I'm going on these podcasts, is to show who I am and my business partner, so people get a sense of us, that I am not some guru that's out there telling you that everything will work out tomorrow. But I am a firm believer that if you put your best foot forward and you are willing to fail and learn from those mistakes and pivot and pivot and pivot, because that's literally what me and my business partner have done. It's like, we tried so many different things. Some worked, and even the things that worked, as I said earlier, were things that it turned out that we didn't like doing. Even though we were earning an income from them, we were like, I don't like doing this. I'm not loving getting out of bed. And this is why I stopped working in the corporate world, was because I didn't love getting out of bed. So now I've put myself in that corner. So I want to feel comfortable that I can get out of that corner again and try something new. And that's really what we've tried to build out here, is to give and instill that confidence in people of like, with LearnersHQ, you can try these things out and you can see what works. And the best case scenario for you is we have the marketplaces there. So I want to stress that we always want people to learn marketing and pull people to their landing pages. And what we promise you is, at the bottom of your landing page or your profile, if it's Karen's Pottery or Karen's Avoid the Maze channel, at the bottom of it, we won't have like, if you like Karen, you're also going to like Martin's podcast and Johnny's podcast, and Karen, like, it's not going to be one of those. Like, the traffic you garner is yours. You did it. You created it. If they want to be loyal to you, they're your customers. You get their email. But if you then get enough reviews and things where it shows a positive result, then you have the opportunity on our marketplaces where we will drive the traffic to actually get a passive income over time. But we also want to stress that, because I've heard a lot of people going like, oh, I can just dump all of my stuff in your marketplace. And I go like, you can, but it doesn't amount to success. It means the same as if you dumped your stuff on Amazon right now. Competition is fierce, but at least on ours, you get the first mover opportunity. And a lot of people, I'll tell you this, Karen, I would love to hear your opinion on this or your advice on it. we've had a lot of people that are saying like, oh, I'll wait to some other podcast are uploading some stuff on there. And I go, okay, so you want to wait till the composition is already taking a foothold, and then you throw your ticket into the race. Okay. What if you went back in time to 2008 and somebody said that he's building out a thing called Udemy or Udemy? I actually don't know how to pronounce it. And you're gonna know what it's gonna become. Would you not jump on that opportunity? But we've actually had a lot of people that are kind of paralysis by analysis and going like, oh, I need somebody else to take the leap of faith before I'll do it. And at least we're trying to convince people like there's no upfront cost. Literally everything, all features, everything is available on our platform for free. You have no risk. But still, despite that, we've had a few people that are kind of like sitting on the fence with it. And it's been very fascinating. I don't know if you can give me any insights, if you have some of the.
Well, part of it is none of us want to pay. But at the same time that we don't want to pay, we don't believe that there's anything in life that's free. And so we're caught in that, little spot. Do I trust? My feeling is, what can it hurt? Okay. This is something that I normally wouldn't do. And in order for me to get ahead, do I have to keep doing the things I've always done that maybe didn't get me to where I want to be? And that's been my belief for the last 13 years. It's like, I don't have all the answers. I can go to seminars, and a lot of them I just turn off because for the first 45 minutes, you're hearing the same thing over and over again. And then at the last 15 minutes, and if you invest, $1,000, I'll send you my book and you can do it.
There you go. Yeah.
And so those books I don't believe in, because what you're telling me is I've got to create the wheel. You're going to give me some little pieces, but you're going to tell me to take those pieces and create the puzzle and make it work for me after spending 1,000 or more.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing you say, and I'm hoping my listeners are hearing this as well, is that they shouldn't come to you if they just have an idea. It has to be an idea that has a purpose, and their purpose, they have to be willing to work on the purpose. And they have to be willing, because I'm assuming that you and your partner also do some coaching along the line in some way with your client.
I'll get into that. Yeah, I'll get into that.
Okay, because I heard that in your voice. Okay. And it's important because we all need some guidance. Okay. I'm going to go back to talking about Podmatch for a minute, because I was putting out an invitation and I was getting people saying, yes, I want to come on, but they weren't sending me their email address like I was asking. They weren't reading that I'm booking 6 months in advance. And so now they're waiting for me to respond, and I'm going, I need your email address, and are you willing to wait 6 months? And then people were starting to get mad at me. Well, why do you need my email address? And it's like, okay, so I went back to Alex, the founder of Podmatch, and I asked him a few questions. He said, shorten up that invitation. And I did. And all of a sudden now people are responding. I get their email address. Like you, it's like, I'll take that 6 months, but if you have anything sooner, and that was wonderful that you said it, because I put it on my list and it was like, okay, which I got something much sooner. But you've got to listen. You've got to be able to adapt. And if you don't, really, then they don't need your services.
Yep.
Because it's about adapting, and digital changes daily. I mean, just Zoom in the last week has changed.
Yeah. Like I respect you, and I know I sent you a little wink message of see you next year, because I was like, wow, Karen is booking it out automated, and I only have respect for it. I was like, oh, I wish I could get on it earlier, so I'm gonna be a little bit sly with it and going like, if you have a chance, I'll jump on it. And I concur with what you're saying here. These are also the things that, like, we're giving people all of the tools available for them to make something of it, but it is going to have to be them who makes it work. With as far as the coaching we do, what we do, we've created a Facebook group that's private. People can join it. And then what me and my business partner are doing is we do these use cases examples. So we attack whatever industry that it is that they're in, and we come up with like 10 plus ways that we can see them utilize a system like ours. And to give you some context, we've now done 2 of them because we literally only just getting started with it. But we've done a crochet pattern making class. I've never crocheted in my life, but I could see how you could utilize the tool, and we were trying to give them insights into it and get their kind of the wheels going. And then we did a Reiki. Do you know what that is?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, I had to literally Google what is Reiki. But even with that, we did that class as well, and let people, and some of the people that do it came back and go like, oh, I never thought of approaching it this way. So we're trying to let people know that our site is not just, I don't want to say it that way, but you can also build courses. You can also do entertainment. You can do PDF sheets. You can do memberships. You can invite them in to avoid the maze, where they get to sit with you on a 1-on-5 and ask you questions, Q&A sites. Like, we're trying to open up people's minds to see the many ways you can make money online if you are obsessive with something. And it doesn't have to be that your course or your class or your membership has to be $1,000, as you said. You can make like your ultimate one that's $1,000, but we also want to give you the freedom to then do like your immediate class for beginners, or that's $39. We also allow you to do something for free as a tripwire to get people into your funnel. And in our Facebook group, we want to just kind of use it as a coaching area to let people know the many ways they can use it. But just like you said, we know that many people will not allow it, be like, oh, that sounds great, and I'll try it out. But we know that not everybody's going to take what's given to them and make something of it. But if nothing else, the only thing that can hurt them on our side is that they'll take up some space of storage space for us that we'll have to pay for. And hopefully that'll be evened out with some successful people over time. But I agree with you. It's interesting to see the amount of people that are just waiting for something to then be given to them because it seems easy on paper, and it's not. Like I said it earlier, and I'll reiterate it here. Most people struggle with the marketing and promoting themselves and how to position it and not feel like they're intruding on somebody. And not everybody has the balls to or say $1,000 for their knowledge, but like the reality is you can get $1,000 for your knowledge if it means that the return on investment means that they will earn 5,000 after investing 1,000. But that's up to you to convince your customers and also provide the value. But we are letting people know that there are many different ways you guys can do this, and accumulative as well. If you have a podcast that says for $3.99, you can get my exclusive where I'll do 20 minutes extra for you. It doesn't take many hundreds of you on the grand scheme of things to sell that, to make it fun for you to then expand on this year. So whenever I hear people doing like the high tickets and all of these buzzwords that I'm sure you encounter on the online space and on TikTok and wherever, where people be like, how you should just sell 3 products of $2,099 and then you're off and running. Where I'm like, there's steps to this. Start low, go to medium, and then you can end up when you have enough knowledge, or if you're able to position yourself. So like we're focusing a lot on telling people how to market themselves, how to feel comfortable promoting what it is that they do. And I also want to say, some of the people like Reiki and crochet pattern making, it's not your usual, like a lot of these people are the ones doing like digital courses as far as like marketing. And that is that world where it's like $2,099 or whatever the figure is, it's usually very high. And there is a big world out there. Like if you're not aware of like Patreon, as an example, one of my best ones I love talking about on Patreon is a guy, I'll throw his name out here if anybody's curious to actually check out what I'm talking about. His name is Dank Pods, so DANK Pods, PODS. And I randomly fell on this guy, landed on him. I don't have any insights. I don't know the fella at all. But he does like, he only records his hands from a top-down view. And he, from what I can tell, disassembles like iPods and like tech from like 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And he reassembles them and he sits and talks about it. And from my rough calculations, and Dank Pods, if you ever hear this, I'm sorry if I'm blowing the cover here. I think he's around like 15 grand a month from just doing this, because he have had enough people that watched him on YouTube, that found comfort in, he's a cool guy. I like his spirit. I like what he teaches me. I love his entertainment value. Don't know what his face looks like, but it's not valuable to me because I just love his little stories and he gets to tinker with things that also moves me. And this guy is earning 15 grand a month from people just being entertained by him putting stuff on Patreon. And I also know a guy like him, he's still losing 10% to Patreon. So Patreon is more than delighted to have him on board. But we are trying to open up people's minds to see, like, don't get caught up in all of these kind of like courses, selling courses and teaching people how to sell courses for the sake of courses. There's so many ways you can do it. And one of the ways we're trying to do it with our coaching, if you will, is on our Facebook group, where we just do these use cases of, here are 10 plus ways you could use a system like ours, where we give you the freedom to do anything you want. But a lot of people just think a course, chapters, I'm not a good teacher, I don't want to be on camera. And then before they know it, they talk themselves out of something. Where, as an example myself, Karen, and again, please jump in because I feel like I am ranting here.
No, I
But
love this.
okay, as an example myself, I've told you I'm from Denmark, and maybe not a lot of people are aware of Denmark. It's a tiny little country compared to America, at least. And the reason I had to leave my country was because I didn't have the opportunity to work for these big brands. They were simply not located in Denmark.
Sure.
So I had to take something drastic as leaving the country. And I worked my way up from the bottom of customer support up to management and into this kind of level. But I could have never gotten to work for them had I not taken these chances. So I also took a lot of courses to build my knowledge up, because I would never be able to get the experience and the insights I needed from just living in Denmark. So I'm a big fan of courses. I'm a big fan of people building and broadening their horizons of doing these things, which is also why we built the place that we have. But that is why, or learners, but that is why we're also trying to tell people, don't get caught up in thinking everything you have to create has to be this perfectly mastered course. You can start amateurish level, expand on that, getting 5 people to purchase it, whether it's friends or family. Start with them, get them to give you iterations, feedback, advice on this was good, this was bad. Build out the next one and feel comfortable with the process, because I think a lot of people watch these very successful people and they forget that it took them 10 years to get to that stage, or 15 years of podcasting and thousands of interviews and production value, and they have a team and all this. And people have this tendency to compare their beginnings to somebody else's middle, right? And I see you nodding along because you know it. And I,
The interesting thing, what you're saying is that we believe so many of these people, and most of them are putting on a show for us. And I know it because I've cornered a couple. There was a woman who was doing something on Facebook all the time, almost every single day, and it would go on and on and on. And then, if you spend $1,000, and I happened to find her email, and I wrote her and I said, I'd like to have a conversation with you. And so she said, fine, I'll come on to your show. Now I record and then I put it up. Okay. I never put hers up.
okay.
Because I knew she was lying to me. And at the end, she said, well, sometimes you have to inflate who you are. And I said, no. And at that point I said, I was coaching before I became a coach and didn't realize that's what I was doing. When I got my certification and decided to start coaching, right away, everybody thought, oh, you've got clients all over the place. Well, I'm very specific on my niche and I know where I'm good at. And so if you contacted me and wanted me to do some coaching with you, I probably would know from the beginning that you aren't my niche. But I have so many people like you out there. I'm going to still do the interview, and then I'm going to come up with this list of contacts I have. What am I getting out of it? I'm helping you. I'm not charging you. Okay. Well, here this woman is telling me through this whole podcast, Karen, you're doing it wrong. You can't give so much away. I said, you know what? I can put my head on my pillow at the end of the day and I can live with myself. I said, if I put out what you're putting out and trying to convince people that I'm making thousands of dollars a day, let alone, 6 figures every year, I said, that's a lie. And I'm not going to do that. Because number one, why would the lady down the street need my assistance? She can't afford to come to somebody who's making 6 figures. She wants somebody who's relatable. That's my niche. Okay. And that's what I'm seeing that you and your partner have decided to do. This is your niche, and you are going to make the money because the right people are going to line up. And that's all you need. But again, you're not going to go out on Facebook or Instagram and tell everybody that, oh, we're making 6 figures after, what is it, a month?
Like the integrity part that you're saying there, right? You have integrity, I have integrity. And I always tell people, like, you don't want to hang out with these people in your private life. Like, if you find out that like your best mate Johnny is walking around lying to everybody, like, it's going to be a very short-lived relationship for you to upkeep face. And sooner or later, somebody's going to burst a bubble, and then you will be, you'll be guilty by just association of hanging out with these strategy. And I'm so not a fan of it. And I can also let you know this and your audience. When I worked for Shopify Plus, I was able to look into a lot of these big guys that, whether they're on YouTube or whatever social media, and a lot of them are not speaking the truth, far from it. And it does break my heart to know how many people that will fall into it, right? If you're somebody who's right now sitting at a job, and let's say you're in customer support, like with the world I came from, a very, very hard job, but it's a job that gives you a ton of great skills in future life if you choose to go down the route of like entrepreneurship. But that kind of role, I know that if right now somebody's getting fed up with their life and they go on YouTube and they write like how to make or how to get rich, and they're going to see somebody who has a massive audience, and the YouTube algorithm is going to show them somebody that, I can almost rest assured you that they're not being truthful. They're going to sell you a course of $299, whatever figure. Yep. And you are going to be led down a very dark path that will make you jaded, and it'll make you come back to me and say like, they're all lying, everybody's lying, and it's all, the world is against me, and there's no chance of you ever making a success in anything outside of just being a salary or working for a salary. And it does hurt me to know how many people fall into that trap. And I know it's like, we can't change it, right? Like, there's no way to really avoid it. It's just the algorithms, the way they work. Right. And if people are willing to broaden their horizons. But me and Neil, my business partner, are trying to, at least, if we can get 5% people to use our platform and become super successful and use them as the tales of, we got Karen on and here's how she grew her business, whatever it is, or her entertainment, whatever it is they want to do. If you only want to use our system and only do the free products, all the power to you. We won't come in and say like, no, get off of it. But we love the idea of, if we can help just 5% of the people out there, that's 5% people less that fell into that trap, that, as you said, I can put my head on my pillow at night, and the same for my business partner. And we felt like we tried. We at least made an effort. We made an impact on people out there. And yeah, as we started this talk, you were, as I said, you didn't say the words, but you said, what's the catch? And I encounter it a lot. And I don't even blame you for thinking that way initially. And a lot of people are still like, what is the catch? And we're doing our hardest. That's why I'm on these podcasts, to let people know who I am. Hopefully it comes through the screen of my passion and my wanting to genuinely know that, like, I know you're out there listening right now and you have a skill set that's amazing. You just don't know how to make a business out of what it is you're doing. And you think you have to stay in that job that is killing your soul. And I was the same. And depression is looming over you and you don't want to admit it, and you got a family you have to uphold a certain phase for, and you got parents that have, or at least you think they have, certain expectations of you. And you and I both know this as parents, that that's not actually really the case. Right. But until you become a parent yourself, you don't get that knowledge. And we are at least a platform where we hope that you're along the journey with us. And you just said earlier as well, everything is, Zoom is updating. We will be the same. We will make instances of things that aren't so good, but we're hoping in a democracy that people will tell us in our Facebook group that, guys, get rid of this wasn't good, and implement this. We also don't want people to walk around with like a hat that says LearnersHQ. We're building a landing page builder right now, which means that if you sign up, Karen, you can get the chance to build out your entire website for free and with your branding. And the only thing that'll be ours as far as LearnersHQ will be the footer, because we have to still uphold certain legalities, and we are not an American-based company either. But other than that, we want people to know that you built this site the way you want it, you promote it the way you want it, and you do good things, or at least don't try and follow our guidelines that we have in there with community guidelines and terms of services. And then it's all up to you guys to make this work. And we want you to make it work. And if we're here to support you and help you do it, come to us. We also want to build out a marketing section within the platform where people like yourself, we could get like, here's Karen. If you're somebody who's trying to start a podcast and you're a female and you're in this realm of world, then Karen is brilliant for you. Here's her course. And then you get the opportunity at the end of that video to go like, click on my link or my description that takes you to my Avoid the Maze podcast or website. And if you want to upsell them outside of our platform, all the power to you. We want to really create that kind of safe haven for people to know that, like, I know you're able to do this, and I know it's going to be tough, and I know imposter syndrome will talk you out of it 10 times over. But if nothing else, we give you the comfort of no money spent on our platform and all of the time to make it work.
Well, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to make you a deal. I'm going to be contacting you within the next 48 hours. I'm going to tell you what I want. Okay.
Yeah.
I do want to join you.
Cool.
And what I would like to do in return, okay, on top of, the future money that we're both going to make, I would like to do a monthly update with you.
Okay.
That we can talk about the fact that, hey, Karen's not doing what she needs to do, or Karen is doing what she needs to do.
Yeah.
And I think that will help me greatly, but not only help me, but the other podcasters in my group. Okay. If they see me doing it, they're going to say, well, wait a second. You're building the network. You're building Avoid the Maze. You're building your coaching. Golly, we're just getting little bits of that.
Yeah.
Okay? You want to build? This is what you do.
Yeah. Sounds awesome.
And I will also take it to everyone who comes on Avoid the Maze, because I think this on top of Podmatch is the future. People don't have thousands and thousands of dollars to invest, and especially if they don't have all the competencies that they need to be successful. So kudos to you and your partner. I am so excited that you pushed me to get you on early.
I appreciate it. Like, this is the thing. For the first time in my life, I want to do that. Yeah, awesome opportunity. It'll be so much fun. The thing is that we learned from our trials and tribulations ourselves on these different platforms was that we were able to make success with something. It wasn't what we wanted to do, but we were like, okay, we are not the most well-educated and skilled. We don't have a marketing background. I had a good career in the professional world, as I said to you, but I was still very rough diamond, and he came from a world of like, just number crunching and not doing that, and he was still able to adapt and push himself to grow within it. So we just realized there's so many people out there that are like sitting on the fence, and for whatever reason they will find a way to talk their way out of it. And then what we have learned, and you can now become a part of that project, is me and my business partner are very good at expanding our horizons and being like, okay, if we start a podcast now, what are 10 different ways, as I said, that we could come up with ideas that would not actually just be your usual put the podcast out, get a sponsor on the podcast, or maybe find somebody else to come in. Like, there's so many ways that people aren't thinking of, but they get caught in looking at their neighbors and going like, well, John is doing it this way and Marianne is doing it this way, and that's the only way that I will then know to do it. And then they think that that's the only way to do it. And we want to tell them, like, there's so many ways you guys can monetize it. And you don't have to charge people thousands of dollars. Now, do I say don't ever charge people thousands of dollars? No, not at all. But just be aware that, like, if you want to sell to people that are well off, you also have to come with a big story. You have to position it. Like, I always teach people, like, if you want to sell things to rich people for a high figure, you have to sell a story. So like, rich people like to compare things and go like, I got this, I'm looking at my barbecue outside, right? I got this barbecue. It was made by a guy from Romania, and he only made like 5 of these barbecues, and he did it for me, and they get bragging rights. And that's how you can kind of sell to people that have more well off, or that's what matters to them. They don't want like the most mass produced whatever. So there's many angles everybody can do. You could do a podcast where you only release 5 episodes, right? People can't listen more than 5 episodes, and they have to buy an episode. But that could be something that could be sold to a high ticket, but it's about positioning It's about storytelling. There's just so many things in it, but you can also cater to an audience that right now aren't in a position they can spend $5,000 for an episode. And then you can go, you know what, I'm making a 20-minute episode of my hour-and-a-half big one, and you get that for $5. So it's all about positioning and approaching it different ways. And at the end of the day, testing these things out, right? Me and Neil, my business partner, always approach it as, okay, we're doing a new thing. Our sample size is 1 in 8 billion or however many people we are on this planet. And that's our sample size to begin with. And then we expand from there. We don't go out with some preconceived notion of, we need to hit this goal because if not, it was a failure. We realize we can have goals, we can have tests, and we can have dreams, but we're trying out things and we just need to get the snowball effect rolling. And a lot of people will feel like they're a failure and they won't jump back in the boat because they're like, well, I tried it once and it didn't work with my podcast. And I know you can sit not along with going like, this ain't easy. Don't think it's easy to go on Podmatch and set up these calls and you have to sit and write emails to people that don't respond to you. And like a lot of people see the finished product, you put something up and they go like, oh, Karen seemed like such a nice lady to sit and talk with. And they go, I could never do this, but they don't understand the things that are happening behind the scenes. And yeah, I'm going a little bit up on a tangent.
Oh, I love it. I love it. You are fantastic. So to our listeners, I am going to contact Martin. I'm going to send him an email that's telling him exactly what I have, what I want to do, because I want him to be able to read through it, understand it. Then Martin and I will get together and get me on board. Then we'll do a podcast 30 days after I get on board. And we're going to talk about,
the experience.
Was he honest today or not? And move forward, because this is I believe we need to challenge ourselves, but we need to look for the opportunities. And when an opportunity is there, if it's really what you want, and I'm going to tell you in the beginning, I never even thought about this, but the more you talked, it was like, it's an opportunity. I would be a fool not to want to grow my business. And if it doesn't work for me, then I'm going to have to figure out, was it me or was it our communication? And it could be a number of things, but I think it's going to work because I really wanted to. So awesome. Thank you, Martin. How can everybody find you? Tell everybody and we'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, so they can log on LearnersHQ.com. What they're going to find there is the customer-focused marketplaces. That will only be what customers ever see, but you'll have your own profiles there. But if you want to get all the information of the features and the benefits and what we offer you as a creator, we have a landing page for that. It's LearnersHQ.com/register. On top of that, I'll give you the link for our Facebook group. You know yourself, Facebook is some weird numbers thing, so it doesn't even matter to it, but I'll give you the link to put in there as well. And then our personal LinkedIns. And we are kind of in between a lot of places, and this will be my message to your listeners as well, is like, we every day try to figure out what is the best place for us right now to take a foothold here in our early days, and therefore that's going to be that way. The Facebook group will probably be the best place, but I will give you the other links for LinkedIn and whatnot, and we'll talk more about that as well as we go on, Karen, of like, find out what works for you guys, and don't get caught up wherever it is you're starting. But for now, those will be the links I'll give you, and who knows, when we talk next time, maybe it'll be some new links and I'll feel completely comfortable with then saying, Facebook group was a waste, we're going here now. And that's how we pivot and adapt to it.
Hey, it is all about pivoting. So I love it. Have a great day and say hi to your mom for me, okay?
I will. I hear them over. I don't know if people have heard this. And again, in the fact of realness, I hope your audience don't mind that. I heard my mom tinkering around. I don't know how noisy it was or anything, but like, no,
it was fine.
This is all, but this is all the world of like feeling comfortable with these things. You guys have an early beginning, and it won't be the perfect scenario that you have in your head, and just get comfortable with that as well. So I feel no guilt about it, or don't feel bad about it. But if anybody heard it, I'm like, yeah, that was the situation. When I talked to Karen the first time,
I heard nothing. I just saw her for a second. That was
okay. That's good. That's good.
Have a great day. Thank you.
You too. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.